The bird at your feeder this morning was not simply eating. It was watching you. Through the glass, through the distance between where you stood with your coffee and where it perched on the rim of the seed tray. It clocked the angle of your shoulders, the pace of your movement, whether you came close to the window or stayed back. And it filed all of that away. Not as a vague impression, not as a general wariness of large mammals, as a specific, individual assessment of you in particular, distinct from every other person who has ever walked through that yard. The birds outside your window have already decided what kind of person you are. What's stranger is that they may not be the only ones who know. Most people who watch birds think of it as a one-way relationship. You observe, they go about their lives, indifferent. You are the audience, they are the subject. That assumption feels reasonable. Birds are small. Their eyes are on the sides of their heads. They scatter the moment a shadow crosses the yard. But that scattering, that instant unanimous retreat, is itself a kind of information. And it is being generated specifically in response to you, even when you haven't moved, even when you haven't made a sound. The science on this is not new. And it is not subtle. Birds do not see a human when they look at you. They see your face. They recognize it. They remember what happened the last time they saw it. And some of them have been watching your face for years. The clearest evidence for this came not from an exotic rainforest species, but from the American crow, the same bird that lands in your yard, pulls apart your compost, and tilts its head at you from the telephone wire. In 2008, John Marsluff and his colleagues at the University of Washington designed a study in which researchers wore rubber caveman masks while trapping and banding wild crows on campus. The crows were handled, banded, and released. The masks were then worn again, weeks, months, even years later, by completely different people, walking the same paths. The crows didn't care who was inside the mask. They mobbed every person wearing the threatening face. They dived, they called, some followed at a distance for hundreds of meters. The individual human had changed entirely. The face had not, and the crows remembered the face. What Marsluff's team found next was more unsettling. Crows that had not been trapped, that had never personally interacted with the masked researcher, also learned to mob the face. They had received the information from other crows, through calls, through watching the behavior of birds that had been there. By the end of the study, the number of crows mobbing the dangerous face had grown well beyond the number that had any direct reason to fear it. The information had spread through the local population the way a rumor spreads through a neighborhood. The crow on your fence right now may have a detailed impression of you that it received secondhand. Something happened in your yard once, or in a yard 3 streets over, and the local crow population has been passing that information around ever since. Crows are not the only birds doing this. In 2009, a team led by Doug Levy at the University of Florida studied northern mockingbirds, a species common across the eastern and southern United States, known for the song pouring out of your shrubbery at midnight. The researchers had volunteers approach mockingbird nests repeatedly. Some touched the nest, some simply passed nearby. The mockingbirds quickly learned
Strangers
to
pass
respond to
by
the
the hundreds
individuals who
every
had
day,
touched their nests
but
with
this
aggressive
clever
dive
bird
bombing,
will sort
while
them all.
largely ignoring the ones who had passed without interference. They did this across dozens of nests in a dense urban park surrounded by hundreds of daily pedestrians. The mockingbird was not reacting to someone near the nest. It was reacting to that person, the one with that face, that walk, that energy. Your backyard mockingbird has a file on you.
But recognition is only the first layer of what's happening. Once a bird knows your face, it begins to interpret your behavior. And that interpretation has a vocabulary far more precise than most people expect. Christopher Templeton at the University of Washington spent years decoding the alarm calls of black-capped chickadees.
We
What he
assume it is
found,
only
published in
instinct.
2005 in the journal Science,
But avian
is
language
that
has
these calls
precision.
are not simple warnings. They are structured messages. The number of D notes at the end of a chickadee's chickadee DDD call encodes specific information about predator size, threat level, and urgency. Smaller, more dangerous predators generate more D notes. Larger, slower predators generate fewer. Other species, nuthatches, titmice, even other songbirds, eavesdrop on chickadee calls and respond appropriately without ever seeing the threat themselves. Your feeder is a broadcast station, and the chickadee is its anchor.
Now, place yourself into that system. When you walk into your yard, the birds around you are not simply watching. They are generating information about you. Your pace, your posture, how close you've come to a nest, whether you've ever done anything threatening. And that information is entering a network of calls, responses, and learned behavior that extends through every species in your yard. The nuthatch that descends your oak tree head first is listening to the chickadee's assessment of you. The titmouse in the viburnum is weighing the same signal. The house sparrow on the fence has its own data to contribute. What would that network say about you? This is not a metaphor. This is the functional reality of what's happening outside your window every morning. You have a reputation among the birds in your yard. It has been built over time, shared across species, and is being updated right now.
That reputation is not fixed. Research on corvid cognition, including work by Nicola Clayton's group at Cambridge University, ongoing since 1998, has shown that birds do not simply store a static impression of a person or a place. They update. They track change over time. They are capable of something that looks very much like what psychologists call episodic-like memory, the ability to remember not just what happened, but when and where. This means the crow watching you now is not comparing you to a fixed internal label. It is comparing you to a history. The morning you scared it off the feeder. The afternoon you sat quietly on the porch steps and didn't move. The season you started putting out peanuts. You have not simply been observed by your birds. You have been known by them in the way that only time and consistency can create.
There is something that tends to stop people when they first understand this. Not alarm, exactly. Something quieter. The realization that the relationship they thought was private, the few minutes at the window, the seed they put out in the cold, has been a two-way exchange all along. Jonathan Balcombe, in his work on animal sentience and pleasure, compiled in What a Fish Knows, and supported by the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness, signed in 2012 by a group of leading neuroscientists, argues that the capacity for subjective experience, for something to matter to an animal, is far more widespread than our default assumptions allow. The bird at your feeder is not a mechanism responding to stimuli. It is an individual with a history, with preferences, with something that functions, measurably, like caution, relief, and recognition. And it is recognizing you.
Go back to this morning. The bird at the feeder, the coffee in your hand, the particular angle of early light across the yard. You assumed you were the observer, the quiet one at the window, watching a small life go about its business. But the bird was already mid-assessment before you reached the glass. It had your face cataloged. It had a read on your body language. It had, in some functional sense, a feeling about you, built from every prior encounter, updated constantly, shared with the birds around it. The window you look through is not one-sided. It never was. What changed just now is that you know it. And that knowledge does something that no amount of binoculars or field guides ever quite manages. It makes you a participant.
So what does a bird need to trust you? The research from Marsluff's crow studies, from Levy's mockingbird work, from decades of behavioral observation at feeders, converges on a consistent picture. Birds do not trust quickly, but they trust durably. Once a yard, a face, a pattern of behavior has been assessed as safe, reliably, repeatedly safe, birds do not forget it. Consistency is the currency, showing up at the same times, moving slowly and predictably, never doing the thing that triggered the alarm call, leaving peanuts on the railing, sitting in the garden without agenda. The birds in your yard are watching for exactly this, and the ones that have been watching the longest have the most nuanced impression of you. In the final moments of this video, there is one more thing they may be doing, something most people never consider.
They may be watching to see if you've noticed them back. Not in any mystical sense, but in the most biological one, behavioral synchrony. Birds are exquisitely attuned to reciprocal attention. When you turn toward them slowly, when you stop, when you hold your position, they register that. It becomes part of their assessment. The crow that held your gaze this week from the wire, the chickadee that landed 18 inches from your hand, they were not being bold for boldness' sake. They were testing a hypothesis they'd already been developing across weeks of quiet observation. You can build on that. Go out this week at the same time. Move slowly. Sit down if you can. Bring peanuts. Bring patience. Let them make up their minds about the new information. They already know your face. Now give them something good to say about it. New video every week. I'll see you in the yard.